location. And then we know that we've got 3 more at the end of the year that we got. And we're like,
There's a flight there.
where do these, and that's what we're seeing.
But now
on the
that
engineering
Southwest
side.
is gone.
Southwest is going there?
People just don't exist, right? And
What did they leave it from LA or?
it's gonna have to be out of state, it's gonna have to be.
you got to pay them, relocate them. It's
I
all
flew,
tough.
I flew from Chicago to,
Get by there. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're facing, and we're trying to, we're going to end up drawing from our, which we've already started doing it. But we're trying to be careful we don't bastardize our own selves, yank them from other groups, and then you're like, well, we left them, because we don't want them doing it to us.
So it's this amount, there's no state income tax, and you don't deal with winter. Or do you want to relocate south or not?
Usually that becomes a really good, easy sell.
It does, but your colleagues look at you like, man, what are you doing? What are you doing?
And unfortunately, we just had that happen to us. Because we have a project in Orlando and one of that's how we're at 3, now we have 4. He said he was looking at it as a promotion, which it was. And he was like, yeah.
So this is the mic right here.
You can't we got a whole season there.
We've got a big.
It's Jen, I can listen to
We've been working with them. They're busy, and
Yes, we can start the party now. Maybe.
it doesn't work.
Without the rain to put air in my tires.
Or it's a good thing, right?
You've got to be kidding. I was sitting in my car like hoping it was like
And the
slow
reality is,
down.
I think it's
So
gonna
the
be.
mics are.
I hope so.
Which
Well,
is
I mean, I
great.
hope so, but then I'm like, part of me's like,
Do not drive.
a breather would be good.
Stand close.
My age, I've got
I
to
know, like seriously, in the pouring rain.
make up a little distance, I got 2 kids in college.
The pressure is
Yep.
This is now.
Yeah, I need this. Yeah, capitalize
I
now. You're
really
right. I'm with you. I'm right there with you.
Right, and maybe put it in the goal, into something tangible,
Well, I can't
right,
Yep.
Um,
I don't know. I wasn't sure, and I was like, that's all I need. Is
Really short term and let's inflate.
The tires. The tires are expensive. I know. I was like,
My heart is breaking. This is my last meeting with you guys.
we're all gonna cry.
I'm trying not to cry right now. Okay.
big smile,
No, I am gonna miss it though. I'm gonna miss being involved, but I'm sure we'll still be
Christopher, I have you
in
now.
touch and whatnot.
I didn't know I had a chair. Okay, thank you.
You're still working for the city though, right?
It's official.
Official, I found that nameplate. We
It
dug it
still
out.
existed.
Dust it off.
We don't, yeah, we don't throw anything away.
Good to see you again.
Hey.
Dale, good to see you, man. How you been?
Doing good.
Hi, good to see you.
Good to see you as well, Pat. Good to see you now that we work next door to each other.
Yeah, on the same floor, opposite sides. Up in the,
So should we get this thing on?
we're waiting a few minutes for Jerry.
Oh, is Jerry gonna make it? Okay.
She was just stuck in some traffic, so I'm gonna give her a few more minutes.
No worries.
That's okay. It's up to the board.
No, we can wait for Jerry. Unless anybody got an objection.
Sorry. Unless we had to go on the air at a specific time.
Christopher, congratulations.
Well, this is pretty good. Attendance. I mean, about as good as we've had.
It's raining outside.
He looks, anytime,
Yeah, some people
like
might
he's gonna
come.
do something, he's gonna go into dog's toys or something, he looks
Yeah,
really,
don't worry about melting if you come to this rain.
Yeah,
his eyes are
I'm
hard
going
to
to.
see.
That's so cute. I love the pose.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. So much fun.
We took one yesterday, he's got yogurt all over his face. He's eating
Hello.
himself and just like painting.
Semi-dry.
It's awesome, huh?
Yeah.
Cool. So cool. I thought I might never see you again.
What's that?
I said I thought I might never see you again.
Yeah, this worked out.
Can't short cut.
As it needed to.
Yep.
Almost, constant,
Awesome.
but hey, you'd given a message. You were close.
I know me. I
I tried to communicate earlier, but too bad I'm here. Let's move on.
That email was really good ideas for imagining. Yeah,
Glad you made it safe, Jerry.
Thank you, that's really all that matters.
Yes, ma'am.
yeah.
Thanks,
I
I
worked
guess we'll
with
get
Ryan for a
started,
little
eh?
bit when I was at Creative. So,
Medai?
he's awesome. They're local.
Medai, are we ready? Yeah. Okay. We'll call the meeting to order. Start a meeting. What do I do now? All right, so welcome to the Thursday, June 13th, Public Art Design Board meeting. First order of business is to approve the minutes from the March 14th.
I approve. I'll call first.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thanks for helping us out.
That's why she comes.
Yes.
Okay, citizens to be heard regarding items not on the agenda.
That'd be you guys. Oh, unless you were on the agenda. Okay.
We are.
Okay,
There you go.
so thank you
I know
there.
that's my usual slot, but today I'm on the agenda.
So all citizens that are here regarding items not on the agenda, there are none. Moving on. New business items, ID 19-6181.
This is to approve the recommendation from the public, or by the Public Art and Design Board for the commission of the public art installation at the Morningside Recreation Center. It is our artist Guy Kemper. He has come back with a design for a mosaic piece right over the gymnasium doors. This is a piece that the selection panel is recommending, which our lovely Karen Cunningham was on. So as you can see, it'll be a mosaic piece. It'll be 6 by 9 dimensions. They'll be divvied up into 3 different panels, but they will be installed so that they're close together and flush. You won't see the seams in between the 3 different panels. Color schemes and all that was decided by the selection panel and the different homeowners associations. They all really thought that this was a good representation of the community and of the center. It kind of played a little bit on the pool that was there. That kind of was like the element of the rec center that remained when all the construction was going on, but it also kind of ties together the whole community. And we decided to have it indoors because it'll prevent any kind of vandalism or anything like that that had kind of risen up in that community during the construction period. So, yeah, any questions? On this other page, you can see the process, his process from design to mosaic. So you can see what it'll look like and how all the different tiles fit together in the colors.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
By mosaic, you mean 3 tiles or multiple tiles? I guess I'm kind of lost because I thought Guy Kemper was more of a glass.
Yeah, he actually does mosaics as well. That's actually his preferred and his one of his favorite mediums to work with. So we kind of went more into that direction just because there wasn't any. We toured the center when we had him flown down back in February, and we toured the center for some different location options. And the panel really felt that something indoors was going to be more appropriate for this site because we had looked at some outdoor options and some glass options as well. But we headed toward inside, and there was only very limited options as far as what we could do in there. And so the options that were agreed upon were to do some sort of piece on top of in the walls somewhere. And so Guy Kemper had suggested doing a mosaic, and the selection panel agreed that would be a better fit. And it's it's a long-lasting piece. That piece will stay there for many years. And
I know one of the questions I raised is it didn't look like a mosaic, this right here. And I asked that question of Guy Kempner, because it looked to me like there were a lot of nuances where it was kind of washed out, and could he do that? He said no problem. We had another one that was more straight lines, that he gave us a choice of 2, but the whole building was, very angular. So that was why they chose this one. And he also seemed to favor the cool color scheme, as opposed, he recommended that as opposed to the warmer. The other one was warmer, it was in reds and so forth.
Yeah, the tones in the facility are definitely much cooler tones. So, like Karen said, there were some options for some more warmer, kind of like sunset palette colors, but the panels really liked the cooler tones and thought that that would be a better fit for the facility.
What is the material that the art is made of?
They're like little ceramic mosaic tiles, and on the back is kind of like a plaster board that will be able to mount it onto the wall.
And I think you said it was going to be split into 3, I believe, so there would be close together, but there would be 3 pieces.
Yes, it'll be 3 panels for, because it'll save on shipping charges. So he'll ship it in 3 big panels, and then they'll be mounted flush on the wall, so you won't be able to even tell where the separation is.
Who's gonna do the install, Madai?
So we were looking at this, currently the city was going to help with the installation process, but I think that's still kind of in some discussions as well.
So that was gonna be my question, thanks, Chris, is the install, would that be included in 36,000, or would that be in addition to, and would that have to come out of the budget as well?
This would be in addition, so this would be something that the Parks and Recs would have to assist with, just because of the error that had occurred previously. We're looking to, that this would cover the cost of the piece. I can follow up on that, but I know that Leroy was going to assist with the installation because of what had occurred before.
And then on that same lines, then, I don't know what that wall is made out of, but is it block, is it studs?
Yeah, it's cement
It
block.
can handle the weight of this, because it'd be pretty heavy.
Yeah.
Okay. So no, we don't know about so the funding is not gonna come, if there is more funding required to install it, Parks and Rec is gonna pay for that?
Yeah, we will. Yeah, Leroy said that he would be assisting if there was any additional funds that would be needed to install, but we should be good.
Okay.
And I can also verify that as well.
Could I ask a question? I know at one point, I missed one of the meetings there, so you probably know the answer, but at one point, we had liked his designs on back and the color scheme. I don't remember why he didn't include that. Did he say what those were, what the reason? He gave us totally different, both of them were totally different than we'd originally seen. Did he say why the others, just out of curiosity, wouldn't work?
What the others were, the
These.
other designs?
These on back, why they wouldn't work? Did he, I don't know, maybe he didn't. He just maybe gave us that.
I
just
don't
wondered.
recall at this moment.
Okay.
Madai, on the first piece of art, I think included in this budget was like any maintenance, like if a mosaic were to fall out or anything like that. Is that still included?
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Is this for the 36,052.50, is that the similar cost that was budgeted previously?
This is the remaining balance. So when we had brought Guy Kemper down to,
It's a neutral.
yeah. Yeah, when we brought him down, we said this is what's left in the budget, because thankfully there wasn't a lot that was used when we dispersed when the first dispersal of monies was given to him, and so this is what's remaining in the account, and then he was able to make a proposal specifically with the dollars that were left.
Thank you. Is the piece named? Is it
Did I think?
It's a working title. I think that Guy Kemper, along with the selection panel, can come up with its official name.
So when's this gonna be done?
By the end of this year is the goal.
And the goal, then how long is it gonna sit in storage somewhere?
It needs to be created first, so it hasn't been made yet. But
A month, and then you figure out after that, so how long it's gonna, you don't have anybody to install it, so it just shows up and goes somewhere.
we are going to line up the timeline to where once it's been constructed, I guess, or designed, that we'll line it up to where it's ready to install as soon as we receive it. So, yeah.
Any questions? Any other questions? Okay, if there are no other
It
questions,
needs to be approved.
I was just about to say, all in favor?
Well, we need a motion.
Oh, we need a motion.
I move that we accept the final design submitted by Guy Kemper.
I'll second.
I'll second. I don't think you can.
Oh, I can't second. I gotta get my book out again. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, approved.
And then for the next item, I would like to introduce Beth Daniels with the Clearwater Arts Alliance. She will be asking for a request for them to fund their proposal of Phase 5 of Thinking Outside the Box in their project.
We're gonna need your, Renee, we're gonna need your help just to get this up.
Yeah, I can do it right here.
Great. Yeah, thank you. Sorry for the froggy voice. Beth Daniels, you've met me before. I'm president of the Clearwater Arts Alliance. Roberta Clark is here with me. She's our vice president, and she's helped me prepare this presentation. So I'm used to booming out my voice, so I'm sorry I'm getting over a cold. I think we've got the PowerPoint going, and we also have hard copies if anyone needs it. So who are we? We've made several presentations to you before, but CAA was formed in 1999 as a 501c3 nonprofit organization to support art and artists in our community. And it was formed really at the behest of the city and Margot Walvold, who was the director of a robust, at that time, cultural arts department in the city. The idea was to be able to have volunteers from the community as well as city support to be able to further support art and artistic efforts in our community. So what do we believe in? Well, our mission is to advocate, collaborate, and bring visibility to the arts in our community. Our board is all volunteers. Everybody is giving both monetarily and of their time and expertise. We have some artists, we have business people, we have, people of all walks of life, but who believe that having a vibrant art community really gives our whole town, more oomph and more livable and more fun place to live. Our vision is to make sure that artists have a place to live where they can make a living and where their work is regarded and given good stature. So we do those things as, for instance, we assume on all our projects, which have been numerous through the years, that artists are always compensated in some way for their creative efforts. I mean, it's nice to say, oh, we're having a party and will you donate a piece so that we can raise money to do such and such, but that doesn't help the artists in our community make a living. So we always make sure that the artists in any of our projects receive compensation that's adequate for their time. So what is the cultural plan? Clearwater's, we were instrumental in helping with that through Margot's guidance and with the city staff going all the way back to 2002. Outside consultant was brought in and a full cultural plan was developed for the city. This board wouldn't exist but for that plan being in place and the things that happened as a consequence of that. There was a community-wide process, there was input from all the citizens, and finally in 2003 an official plan was enacted. Now, obviously from 2003, now we are 2019. It's time for an update and a refreshment of that plan. As a matter of fact, when I spoke with the assistant city manager about the new position being created that Christopher has come back to now, one of the things he pointed out was the town really needs to do an updated plan. But we at CAA were very involved and instrumental in getting that first plan enacted. So part of that then, that plan was enacted, and part of that was to make public art a focus in our community. Well, there has to be some way then to provide funding for that, so that then in turn became a strong lobbying point. Our volunteers and our board members were instrumental in speaking to all the city council people at the time and getting the public art ordinance passed. So that, and of course that was passed, which then created this board, because there were two elements to it: the city monies and funds, which are created anytime a capital project is produced, so there's the percentage of funds that comes to you. And in its original iteration, the ordinance had, of course, a private developer function also, where any project over, I think it was 2 million or whatever, had to have a component. Unfortunately, that was taken out some years later, but still this is the fund that you essentially administer. Obviously, what you just voted on were funds out of the capital improvement project, and all of the other projects that we hear about that have been installed in the community have come about that way. But there also, of course, are some general projects as well, or a general fund or discretionary fund, because there's not always sites that are appropriate for the piece to, whatever piece is created to be there. So what type of projects is Clearwater Arts done that you may be familiar with? Most folks know the Pianos and Pinellas project. That was a lot of fun. That went on over a several-month period. 11 different artists from our community painted upright pianos that were placed out in the community. All the sites were places like the courthouse and right outside the Capitol Theater, things like that. And then they were played and available to be played by the community. All those artists were paid for their services to paint that. I have come personally here and presented you all with the cultural map. We designed and printed that. It's now in its second edition with changes that have been updated. And that locates all of the public art, including all the pieces that your group has approved, all of the performing venues, and all of the galleries and studios that are in our community, in our town. So we've done that. We've recently completed the private developer art guide, which I again visited with you and shared with you. It's a tool for developers to use since they're no longer required under the ordinance to provide public art. It's an encouragement. So we've been going to chamber meetings and to business meetings, giving this out and offering to help with any company that's willing to undertake a public art project as part of their development. We very recently reactivated a space that was originally put in. Christopher will probably remember this, but when the municipal parking garage was put in, where most city staff parks, there was a set of cabinets built that are secure, glass in the front, lights in it, hanging, so that a piece of art can be put in it and secure, but it had been probably 2 years since there had been anything in it. So we undertook to fill that with vibrant art, which is in there now, and we have a plan to about every 6 or 8 weeks to swap that out for local artists who can have their pieces in there. So those are some of the things we have been busy with lately. So obviously most of you then, moving on to the specific, that would be our Thinking Outside the Box project. Most of you have seen these colorful boxes all around town, but to give you a little background, it first started, and certainly Christopher was instrumental in helping us. In 2014, we started researching and learned that other communities had taken these. Most of them are about the size of this podium. They vary some, but they're pretty large and they're always gray and pretty, not very attractive. So we came up with the idea of putting art on these. There's 3 different jurisdictions. It could be city-controlled, county-controlled, or DOT-controlled. But in our case, we were able to work with the city, do the research, make sure what we were going to do was going to be legal, remain, be something that would really be lasting. So we did that research and we came up with the concept that some people think when they drive by that somebody has gone out there painted on the box. Not true. The design has been done as an original painting, but then a digital copy of that is made that will be the right size and proportion for the box we're working on. And then it is applied like a shrink wrap. So there was significant research done to find the right materials that would hold up in our weather, etc. Because it's obviously with the heat and our rains and everything, it has to be something that's going to really last. So the initial phases were for us to explore that, to get all the protocols in place, figure out how the artists would be paid, how we would legally have control of the image, so there wouldn't be any, copyright or anything like that issues. So we accomplished all that, and in 2015, we installed the first 3 that we did on our own nickel, all our own money that we'd already fundraised, and put them in 3 places as a prototype. Because we wanted to see, is it gonna be attractive? Are people going to take to them? Are they gonna like them? Is it gonna hold up? So, you're probably familiar, there's one out at the beach near the entrance to Pier 60, the one that's right by the Capitol Theater, and also the one across from O'Keefe's, where that original prototype. So that got us going. So then I would call that our phase one. Then we obviously had by then developed a relationship with the city traffic people so that we knew which ones they controlled. We could get proper approvals. We could make sure there's certain safety images that have to remain because there's electrical guts in there that work. Obviously the doors still have to open and all that still has to function. So we got through all those things and worked that out. And the second phase was that the DDB funded us. And we were able to do 6 more. DDB, of course, has a limited footprint, just the downtown area. So DDB authorized us to put in 6 more, and they're all really pretty much up and down Cleveland, and the one that's right here, kitty corner to the library on Osceola and Drew. So we did those. Then as we moved into phase 3, we got a little bit of discretionary post-budget, or money that was sort of left in the budget, in the city manager's budget, and he gave us some more. So our next focus was to say, well, as people come into Clearwater from another town, let's focus on some of these key entry points. So if you are coming from Dunedin down Edgewater and you go through the light at Sunset Point, the first thing you see is the guy playing the saxophone on the side of the box. So that's just an example, but there's several all around the entrances into the city, coming in from Bel Air, coming down from Dunedin, coming up from Largo. And also we placed one across from the entrance to Ruth Eckerd Hall. So those were that was done with city money. And we also all along have had a part of the project where we encourage private sponsors and businesses to make a donation with which we will then make an installation, let them choose the art. We already paid the artists for the rights to use the images, choose their piece, choose their location, and as long as it's approved, then we have installed quite a few more with that sort of public-private partnership thing going on. So we've done 9 more total with that, including that just this last month, we installed 4 beautiful new ones, 2 that are right now by Morton Plant Hospital, sponsored by them, and 2 by Baycare out on Drew Street as you approach their beautiful new office buildings. So those 4 were just accomplished in the last month, and they're really very handsome pieces. So the next slide shows you all, I think 26, if I counted right, that are now all around town in various places that are under control. So when we had been asking for some time if there was some availability of funding from y'all's piggy bank, so to speak, because with these discretionary projects, we felt like another phase or being able to continue this would be worthy of it. And we had asked Madai to consult with the city attorney and others and say, can a group like ours who are working only within the boundaries of Clearwater, which we do, make an application to y'all for use of some of those discretionary funds. And I think just like at your last March meeting, she made a presentation about, yes, that can be done if it fits within these certain criteria. And those criteria, which again are under your ordinance and under the plan, are that there are several things the city wanted to do. They had this is reading from the ordinance, that there's a vision for public art in Clearwater that will add to the visual identity of the city, will create memorable images of the city for visitors and residents alike, and it will reinforce Clearwater's role as an emerging regional leader in culture, recreation, and environment, a good place to live, work, learn, and play. And so there were several themes under that, including items or projects that would help in shaping the image of the city. That was one. Another that would strengthen civic connectivity. And the third was to support neighborhood identity. So, and there's more detail in the ordinance than that, but we particularly focused on devising a project where we thought we could support neighborhood identity. And we, in a way, I think, feel like we've already, to some extent, contributed to the city image thing. We've already got 26 of these out there that through a cobbling together of various funding sources is already a fairly big presence for public art in our community. And some 6 local artists have already been compensated for their work in producing those images. But particularly for a presentation to y'all, we thought we should focus on supporting neighborhood identity. So after that presentation by Madai at your last quarterly meeting, we started to meet with Clearwater's new neighborhood coordinator to flesh out the ideas of, well, what if in a new presentation or a new idea we could say, let's look at individual neighborhoods that would like to have something that is unique to them. Rather than just having the images already created, let's come up with an idea where you have active neighborhoods that would like to do something that would really be a source of pride for their neighborhood and also a source of identity. So we started working with Juliana and we came up with this new concept. We have already examined a bunch of different neighborhoods she's given us that are very active, very anxious to do things that would be tied to their particular community. And the way we would do this is that we would, rather than doing a general call to artists, show us your images, and if we think they'd be good images for signal boxes, you might be selected. Instead, we would be picking artists who would agree to create a unique image by going and meeting with community leaders, HOAs, whatever they are, coming up with something that might be historical. I've already heard from one neighborhood where there used to be fields of gladiolas that were a whole big part of Clearwater for 50 years. It was a giant nursery with all these flowers. Well, that may be a design concept that comes to them. But the artists in their call and in paying them for their time would say, I'll show you what my skills are, but before I create an image, I will go meet with these folks, give them some concepts, and let those individual neighborhoods then help craft and pick that unique image for them. And then, of course, we would go forward with the digitization of it so it can be properly installed and so forth. So that would be the way we would tie to that. And the particular points for neighborhood identity were to create projects. It would be appropriate for the expenditure of your funds if it's a project that would create points of pride within individual neighborhoods, or it would be give that community stronger levels of community involvement. So we feel like that what we're suggesting, especially the way we would structure it, would in fact do that. So Juliana is here and is in support of this project. She had another meeting. She wasn't sure if she could be here, but she's here. So if she has anything, I would like to ask her to add her comments, because she's been part of the idea of bringing this forward and how to structure it.
In the off chance that I wasn't going to make it today, I did put together a statement in support. Here, I'll just give these to pass down if you wouldn't mind. But I did want to say that in the time that Beth and I have been working together, thank you, I appreciate that. In the time that Beth and I have been working together, we have vetted this across several neighborhoods. We have more than 75 neighborhood associations in the city of Clearwater. Even in the very informal stages of vetting this, I'm confident that we could get more community partners than we could possibly even be able to fund. Even prior to starting to vet this idea, I had gotten a call from a neighborhood association that had seen one of Beth's signal boxes and wanted to do that same program in their own neighborhood, but establishing like a program that would emphasize neighborhood identity that would kind of be unique to them. I do think that this is a really extraordinary opportunity for neighborhood associations to come together to work on a public art idea that then specifically supports neighborhood identity and neighborhood pride. So I really can't say enough great things about the project, and I really hope you will consider funding it.
Thank you, Juliana. Some of the neighborhoods she had suggested, this is in our outline. I think we've got that page on. And we don't know how it will shake out as far as who comes forward and says, we're ready to rock and roll. But some of the neighborhoods that came to mind that she's already seen have a very active interest in this type of thing would be Lake Bellevue, Old Clearwater Bay, Country Club Edition, Hillcrest, Glenwood, North Greenwood, Skycrest, Clearwater Beach, Glen Oaks, East Gateway, and Woodgate. We've either had some contact from those groups or she's already had some other work with them that indicates a very active interest in pursuing something like this. So the next question is, what would it cost? Well, we know already from our experience, having done 26 of these now, that it, plus or minus a little bit, it basically costs $1,500 a piece to do these. Well, 500 of that is the artist fee. If, in this case, we're suggesting each one is a one-off, obviously they're individual things created for a specific neighborhood. We have paid $1,000 to the artist before, but they have given us the rights to a couple images that then can be repeated. So we know that we've stretched that expense out over multiple boxes, but we felt like that's, I mean, even at that, that's a fairly inexpensive price to pay if somebody is going to create the piece and go and collaborate with the neighborhood to come up with the design. Some boxes cost a little less than $1,000 to wrap, some cost a little more. They are not uniform in size. Interestingly, the way we are actually billed for it is by the square inch of that expensive material. But if we don't use the good material, you know, you're not going to get something that lasts. Our first box was installed in early 15 out on the beach, and it still looks great. But we spec the materials that are supposed to last 7 or 8 years. So, and that's probably a conservative guess on how long they would last. But at any rate, so we figured there would probably be some that would be a little less, some that will be a little more, based on our experience of already having installed 26 of these, every single one of which is a different size. But, so with a funding of, say, we're giving this as an example, funding of $9,000, we could do 6 individual ones for sure. And if for whatever reason, the neighborhoods that stepped up either had some little bit that they could contribute monetarily, or the box was smaller, there might even be ability to stretch it a little. But we knew for sure that for that fee, we could at least accomplish 6 more of these. And our proposal would be to work with whatever neighborhoods Juliana points out that are most anxious to proceed and have, you know, would want to collaborate with us. So that's our presentation, and we would be happy to answer any of your questions. Yes, sir.
How many available boxes are there out there?
We don't know that 100%, but I mean, we've already identified at least 35 more locations that would be city controlled. I mean, sometimes you will find out, okay, jurisdictionally, the city owns it. Technically, it would work. The first site we sent our guy out to install in Countryside, he came back and he says, you know what? There's too many shrubs around that one. It's not going to be well seen. This would be a better corner. So sometimes there's things that just, you know, they just aren't always located in the best, most visible place. Or here's a perfect example. We've been contacted directly, without knowing about any of this proposal, by a neighborhood, Woodgate, up in Countryside, that wants to put a box in. Well, the turn into their neighborhood's on Belcher Road. The county controls Belcher Road. I have been working seriously hard, literally, easily, 50 to 80 hours of work over 2.5 years to try to get the county to approve these, and they have not yet approved them. So if they own and control the box and they've decided that they're not going to allow us to do these, you're stuck. The turn into Morningside is on Belcher. It's a county-controlled box. It would be a perfect place, very visible, highly identified with that neighborhood. So, you know, we can't tell you how many, but just how many did we come up with? Juliana, I made her a list. I just drove the western part of the town, like from about the high school this way, not counting any of the ones we've already done, and I came up with 30 more locations. And I ran them by Bertels, who's the chief guy at traffic, and there was like 2 that he said, nope, that one's actually on the edge, it's technically Dunedin, or nope, that one's a county box. But in other words, just in that one segment of the town, we came up with another 30 available locations. So, and not all would be perfect for a neighborhood, you know, there will be some, but I mean, there's one on Island Estates that's not been done, where you turn to go to the aquarium. That's a pretty big neighborhood. There's one on the causeway, we already did that one. But the one that's within interior of that where you turn, so those are just examples. We've done a lot of background research, we know there's plenty of places. What we would want to do is match them up with these neighborhoods who really do want to get involved in an active project. And so I don't want to prejudge what those would be. I'm just confident, based on what we've already done, that we could do this times 6 and still have plenty of boxes.
Can I throw one of the, so and thank you, Beth. So to answer your question, or to kind of feed off of what you said, you said you had trouble with the county, and I live right on the corner of Countryside and 580. That is a state FDOT, I would guess. So have you had much luck with them?
Well, they say on the face of it, FDOT, I've worked with them too.
Mm-hmm.
They say on the face of it, yes, it's been done in other communities, we'll do it. Here's the 40-page community facility agreement you have to execute before you do one. We're working with a bunch of volunteers. You figure out who's going to go do that 40-page agreement. So far, I mean, maybe through Christopher being back and having more backup to share the work, we may be able to get approvals from those areas. I mean, I have had Barbara St. Clair with the Creative Pinellas working on a dialogue with the county people for 1.5 years. And all they keep saying is they got a problem, they don't know why, they can't approve it. I don't know why. And I wish it wasn't so.
How are you going to I understand that there's plenty of available boxes from the city, and the city is a easy to work with partner.
Correct.
What's the process by which that will be taken to determine which neighborhoods would get, if you had 6 as the next, what would be that process?
I don't have an answer for that precisely, other than to say we would be looking to Juliana, who is, her full-time job is neighborhood coordinator. And, the people who my statement would be the people who stick their hands up first to say, we're ready to go, we want to support this, would be.
Cross-referenced with, is there a city box?
Is there one that would work? Right. And we've already identified a lot of potential ones. I'll give you a couple for instances. You drive down Drew Street, you come to Betty Lane, there's a golf course there that the city has owned that land for almost 100 years. There's not anything on that signal box, and there's a sign that identifies the Country Club Estates neighborhood about a half a block from that turn. I mean, without knowing anything about this, somebody from the country club called and said, what? Do one on our corner. And I said, well, let's see how this plays out. Maybe your neighborhood would step up for that. But there's a couple examples. Glenwood, there's a prominent visible box at Highland and Drew. Glenwood's on one side and Hillcrest is on the other. Long-term neighborhoods that have been here, and active groups that have been here for a long time. So those are a couple examples. But, if you guys wanted to say, how do we decide what neighborhood? I don't know, other than to say that there are some that have been working with her that are very anxious to proceed. In my view, they probably ought to get the first crack, but it needs to work with there being a good location, some balance of that.
I would like to add on to that, Jerry. I appreciate, I think it's a great program, and I would hope that state and federal locations could be part of that discussion, because those are the high volume areas for tourists coming into our community, and there could be a lot of benefit. But I understand working with those agencies and the realities that it does come down to memorandums of agreement and liabilities, and this program isn't set up to answer that. Building upon what our chair was talking about is I'm interested in the equity of decisioning of where that improves. This is a great resource. And I would differ with your stated position of a organized neighborhood who has been asking for it may or may not be the best location and expenditure of fund in an equity discussion. I think that since it's a use of public dollar, we have to ensure that there's a process in place so that all neighborhood organizations understand that that opportunity is there and show interest, okay? I do believe that since it's a use of public dollar, that HOAs should belly up to do in kind or straight payment.
Some kind of contribution.
Some benefit to it, because we do not have, and this will be a question coming back to Madai on the funding side, what's our funding balance? What's our decision process on other things that we were committed to as an organization and a board? And how does $9,000 sit into that?
Right.
All of those things being said, I applaud the program. And I want to support it. I just think that in where we sit in terms of a publicly appointed agent, we need to ensure that there is a definition of how selection is made and that there's equity, that
Yeah.
HOAs know about it.
Yeah, that didn't come up in my discussions with Juliana. I think it's a good point. Perhaps before we do anything with calls to artists or whatever, a process gets put out there that says, this new program's gonna open up. Here's the way for your community to get in the process.
And the importance in it is you've already identified, from your experience, several limiting factors. And, my neighborhood is off of Belcher as well. And I know that it would be great to have it, but it isn't gonna go there.
Yeah.
And containing expectations of neighborhoods that, hey, this box is not possible. Criteria one is on a city-maintained right-of-way.
Right.
And there's a little due diligence that HOA has to do.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and we can very quickly, with the help that we've already, we got a good relationship with traffic, they will tell us instantly. They can look it up and they can say.
They could generate a map that
Yeah.
could just be available. These are the corridors.
These are all available.
Right.
That's right. And I think all those things are points well taken, and they can certainly be built into the rollout of this, it seems to me.
So, Madai,
And I think you would, excuse me, but we also want to consider, we've already, with our own money we raised some other way, put some in a lot of these
I know.
spots.
And I applaud.
So so there's, like at Enterprise and Countryside, there's a basketball court and a big community, you turn it, well, we did that on our own nickel some time ago, so, but, so those kind of things could be built in too.
Yep. So, Madai, following up on it, do you have any budget information available that you could share with us?
Not at this time, but we can get that information to you.
Okay, and it's just typically, Chris, I think, in the past, and I would assume in the future, as funding items come forward, we just have a point in place of where we're at,
Right.
what's committed, and it gives us the ability to say whether or how much we want to commit with our reoccurring fees, or our reoccurring programs that we're involved in.
Yeah, we can look at unencumbered project funds and see what can be used for a special initiative project like of this nature. I think in the future, maybe the review process and ensuring the equitable nature of that is going to allow us to say, okay, how do we prioritize, as you were saying, which projects are going to receive those city dollars, but having a standardized review process in place would also support the individual neighborhoods who want to move forward on a project that doesn't use city funds.
Right.
And ensuring that a process is followed with that supports them, but still keeps that level of quality and provides them with the access and, working with our neighborhood coordinator to get a project that does brighten their community. It's a good way of doing that.
Speaking for neighborhoods, I know I think there's quite a variety in Clearwater as far as how affluent the neighborhood is. And, some may have that much money, but most of them operate pretty closely to their budget. Every time you want to increase the membership $10, it's a big deal. That would be one concern. And even when they have a surplus of money, usually they hold on to a certain amount of it in case of their hurricane. They have. So I think that, I'm not sure, I'm sure there'll be some neighborhoods who can afford it, but I would bet there's not too many that are going to be able to afford it.
As the program exists today, if an HOA says, we got the $1,500, their box can go in next week.
Right.
I mean, we've been doing that already,
Yeah.
okay? So I'm just saying, it could be Bill's Bike Shop, it could be Friends of such and such, the Friends of the Garden Club, it could be anything. We are already doing that now. If they come up with the money, this proposal to you has to do with the discretionary pot you have and a way to continue to grow this.
What I was going to suggest is you might try approaching to them as a fundraising project, maybe in conjunction with a neighborhood picnic or something like that, where a neighborhood could do something like that. That might give a little bit more to it because, like I said, I think it could be. Get it everywhere you can, but I'm not sure how many neighborhoods would do it. And there's another thing, which is that some neighborhoods are mandatory as far as membership, but a lot of them are voluntary, and they don't really even a big neighborhood may not have that many people who belong.
Yeah, if it's an older place and it's not a required thing, it's known that way and they have certain identity. And I still think that's worth encouraging and upholding, absolutely.
Encouraging.
It may not have a budget.
And just adding to that, I don't want to steer the board in my belief that there should be some dollar commitment from HOAs. I think it's a good program for community improvement and enhancement, but I do want to ensure that it's an equitable approach.
I agree. I mean, our original idea didn't have, we don't have built into our concept that a neighborhood has to give the same amount on top of or whatever. Right. We're telling you what we know based on doing 26 of them. If you're going to pay the artist anything reasonable, it's going to cost you that much to do them. So that's what we're saying. And if you decided that neighborhoods couldn't get approved unless they came up with a way to throw in X amount more so we could do more of them, that's up to you to set those requirements.
I would suspect as well, if I may chime in here, that asking neighborhoods to contribute funds to the same project might actually have the opposite effect of that you're hoping to have in equity. So like Lake Bellevue neighborhood, for instance, their piggy bank right now is somewhat less than $200. So there's no way that they would ever participate in a project in which they're contributing those funds because those $200 are going to go to their neighborhood's day event, and that's about it. It's going to go to buy some hamburgers and some hot dogs, like that's about it. So there's that aspect of it. But to address the equity concern, it would be really, really simple to just roll out an application process where we might say, if you can both have, some roads that have these applicable signal boxes and you're willing to submit this application, and then we might just do those applications on maybe a first come, first served basis, but I think we could address it really easily through an application process as opposed to me picking up the phone and saying, your neighborhood has a great signal box, would you be interested in partnering with us?
Just thinking.
Go ahead, Chris.
No,
No, please, go ahead.
I was just thinking through existing structures of what we have in place already, as far as guiding the use of the 6 boxes locations. We have the master plan that was created in 2007 for public art, and reading through that, although this is kind of monkey wrenching it in there because these weren't around at that time, but looking and seeing if there are any neighborhood priorities as far as that civic pride section of the document and seeing if those might tie up together. That would provide at least codified way of justification for the use of city funds on those projects. Hand in hand with that, presuming that there's a way that it can be done appropriately by the city and then accessible by the public, sponsorships. If someone in that neighborhood happens to work for a corporation that says we'll kick in, money for, for your signal box in the area, and making sure that the corporation can be recognized, but in a way that doesn't conflict with existing city policies like sign code and whatnot.
I mean, I'll give you a perfect example. I am sure the people in Harbor Oaks could afford to be a sponsor, right? Morton Plant just paid to have one put on the corner of South Fort Harrison and Druid Road because it was the next closest thing to the hospital besides the entrance at Pinellas. They paid for both of those. They're beautiful, and they're now in place. So there will be some that will kind of eliminate themselves because they've really already been covered. Somebody else already paid that bill, in effect. So, thank you. Any other?
Jen, did you have something?
Yeah, just my thought, I think, was along the line of Christopher, but if I remember when we were looking at the cultural plan originally, there were some neighborhoods that were targeted by the city, like, parks and different things that were due to have some type of public art project come in anyway. So it seems that if this could be part of their project, then that would be equitable. If it, instead of putting a statue in, maybe the first step is to put a signal box in. And it would be a way to quickly facilitate, something that wouldn't take a year to get up there, but quickly facilitate some type of art. And I think some of those neighborhoods were socioeconomically challenged, which, a lot of them are not getting the art that the big corporations are putting in. So maybe that's what would
I really
cause it
appreciate
to be
that
equitable.
observation.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
And that's something that I was going to mention, because for us to use some of our discretionary income, one of the things we need to take a look at is what's a highly trafficked area that would benefit the majority. That's where the Drew Street and the Myrtle Streets, those types of places would be so beneficial, but it would potentially preclude some of those other places that might show up in the report.
So I think maybe the problem with applications is that if you go to, higher socioeconomic communities and they're turning in applications, I feel like those are going to be the first people that turn in an application. A community that is barely able to get food on the table is not going to be the community that has time to gather together and put together an application.
Sure. Well, luckily, like, for instance, we've already done, it was part of our kind of idea of picking some ideal places that were entrances into the city. So we have one at Palmetto and Highland. We also have one on Kings Highway, which we did to commemorate, installed it when Arts for Life had like a 10th anniversary celebration. And we put it in that week, the same week the kids did a mural on their building. So it's about a block and a half north of that. But we have already, through our own auspices, handled some of those spots, which at least gives them some type of design and color out there and vibrancy. So
one more comment about, just keep thinking about longevity of these pieces. You mentioned that it's a high quality thing, but then you said it was like a 7-year lifespan.
That's what they said they would guarantee us.
Right.
It's probably a 3M product. It's
I guess the same.
what's used to wrap vehicles. I'm familiar.
Buses.
I'm familiar with the product, and it actually has much longer than a 7-year lifespan. It's just that's what 3M says to cover their
Details.
that. But you can probably get 2x,
So
2.5x the time.
So that being said, in my mind, one of the things that I've personally experienced with vinyl wraps, whoever they come from, is when they degrade, when that time comes, they don't look so good.
Yeah.
And we talked, I think we've seen a couple of presentations previously about some of the murals that happen as they degrade. They start to kind of look not so hot. So maybe something to think about for long term, not for this group because we'll be gone, but is there a replacement plan? Because you said something that was very, kind of tingled my ears. You said that you guys are acquiring the licenses to basically renew that again. So maybe there's a thought process to maybe put in place some kind of a plan to replace them at a time.
Yeah, there's two different things that could occur. As they start to degrade, there's a product that can be placed over top of it to protect it and extend the
Clear.
life. The clear coat? Yeah.
Yeah, and that, you know, that's kind of like a maintenance program to make it last,
We
maybe
do it with murals.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't think of this either, but, I mean, we had one the other day. We had 2 or 3 months ago paid to put one in at the corner of Drew and Myrtle. The Clearwater Bar office is there and whatever. Anyway, there was a car accident. Somebody went off the road and knocked over the whole box, smashed it to smithereens. Well, obviously, the traffic department came in and put a temporary one, because the light has to function there. And they took the cabinet away because it was all, you know, really crunched up. And, you know, hadn't thought about it before, but
Yeah.
I have been a lawyer for 40 years, so I called the cop. I said, who was responsible for the accident? Found out the driver who caused the accident. If they'd run into my car and I had an expensive paint job, that they would have had to cover that. I wrote them a letter, I sent them the pictures, and they sent us a check to replace that wrapping when the new box isn't in yet. But we have that check in our account so that when the new city is done putting their new box in place, it'll get rewrapped almost instantly. So, although when I went by, because they're still working on it, it's the last week, I will say, there's a good comment. The guys that were putting the box in, he says, you know, we have had no instances. Now, this is with 26 of them out there, and the oldest is about 4 or 5 years now. No instances of vandalism. He says, the ones that are covered with the art are not the ones that are getting spray painted.
Right.
It's anecdotal, clearly. It's not scientific, but this is the guy that fixes them and has to go out and deal with them, telling me that. And I didn't solicit that. I was driving by saying, when are you gonna be finished?
You give a blank cabinets and an artist will fill it.
So if it's filled with something nice, then maybe leave it alone.
That's right.
So that's,
Christopher has another question.
No, I will check for you. I believe commissions done through discretionary funds. I know that any of the permanent artwork is covered by the city's insurance policy. I can double check for you to see if discretionary fund would go that way as well. That would provide you at least with some recompense if something happens to it, you know, you're covered.
yeah.
Good.
I mean, that'd be another way to cover it too.
Any other questions for? Thank you for the information. We'll take it under advisement. All right, moving on to line item 5, old business item. Is there any old business?
Well, I brought up something one time before. I'd like to submit it again. I think it would be a good idea if we use some of our funds to create a prototype of a bus shelter and used it with submitted it to architects, asked them to come up with a prototype as a contest. I think idea to have for example, a bus shelter that is unique and stands out as Clearwater. I think it's a good use of our funds. I don't think that we have to just do sculpture and paintings. I mean, I think that, the bus shelters are kind of pathetic and usual looking, but I think it would also be good for the architecture student, to have an opportunity to do something like this, to put in his resume, and I just think it would be an interesting thing for us to do. Like I said, we don't have to always do one of a kind. Using funds to do a prototype, something that could be copied and put at different places, but that's unique and artistic, I think would be a good use of our funds.
Interesting idea. Any comments?
The observation I'll make, and it really comes down to the end agency who is going to be implementing PSTA, okay? Shelters have to meet their set of criteria. Mm-hmm. And I think that we should know a little bit more whether PSTA will accept. They're very limiting, like all
Yes.
agencies.
I can look into that.
But, you know, before, to enact a funding request for prototypicals, it would have to, you know, that would, in my mind, we'd need to know whether they would be receptive to it and whether, they would be looking for a funding, differential between what is they currently build as their prototype and, or their typical and whatever this prototype would be.
It would be also interesting to take a look at their timeline and budgets. Do they have anything on for the next 3-5 years where they're looking to replace and/or augment any of the bus shelters in our area? So that if something like that happened, it could plug into something that they were already
That's a good
having
point.
scheduled.
In other words, you know, they would put some money into it and we would supplement it. That's a good point, yeah.
It's a potential.
But I know at one time they did have I saw a design one time for one. It was really unique, but I don't think it was ever implemented, and this was going back about 10 years. So I don't think they'd be against it, but, you know, the interesting thing is why it was never implemented.
They're
But,
very approachable. They're very easy to talk to.
I know that PSDA has done a few in city. There's one in Dunedin near the hospital right now. So they're starting to work with organizations. I think this was North Pinellas Cultural Alliance that partnered with them on Dunedin. So it may be getting more affordable, and they may be more open to exploring that. So that may.
there's also naming rights that could come into that, so that you could name the stations after, say, Morton Plant and things like that. And you know, organizations tend to like naming rights, even if it's not really at their place. You know, it might be Raymond James has one, but I think that might be another possibility.
And again, that, yeah, it may be a possibility, or it may be a signing issue with the city code about advertisement at additional offsite advertisement. It just depends on how our code is written.
Anything else? Director's report? Or have we had it? We've had it. Any board members have anything that they'd like to share, report on?
I'd just like to thank Madai for her time with us.
Absolutely.
Good luck moving forward. You're still with the city, correct? Right?
In the special events division, yes.
Special events.
We finally got you. Oh, molded and then you just leave.
It's
Well.
exciting, but I wanted to say thank you for being patient and flexible with me these last 2 years and understanding and teaching me all about public art along the way. And I definitely learned a lot during these past 2 years. And of course, introducing you to the new cultural affairs coordinator, Chris Hubbard. And you guys are amazing hands. Go ahead. So you will take public art to the next level.
Hopefully he's qualified. Is there anything you want to say?
Oh, I want to say thank you, Madai, for taking care of the program, and I look forward to stepping back into the role, to serving the board and the citizens of Clearwater. I think we have some really neat opportunities. One of my main focuses right now, coming back into the position, is refreshing the cultural plan. That's one of the priorities that was put forth for this position, and with the backing of the city manager's department and transitioning the position out of public Parks and Recreation into city management, it allows for more partnership and collaboration across different divisions. So I think that this cultural plan will be very inclusive of a lot of different initiatives that are happening in the city. And we will get a really good perspective out of what's been accomplished previously and where we can go with that momentum into the future. So it's good to be back, glad to be working with you again, and look to the future.
Well, I know I'm super excited by the show of support from the city by having a position such as yours. There's so many great things in the city of Clearwater, and so having the city allocate the funds, the position, and the focus, we're really going to be able to accomplish a lot of the things that we've been wanting to accomplish over the past X amount of years. Not that it'll be any easier, but there'll be a better chance we'll get it through. Don't write that in there. All right, if anybody doesn't have anything else, then the meeting is adjourned. I love doing that.